Assalamualaikum to our beloved lecturer, Madam Sita Azrina binti Adnan. Now, my group and I will be presenting on supply chain management. Before that, I would like to introduce my group member. The first presenter will be me myself, Nordini Adin binti Usari. The second presenter will be Nasr Hakim bin Sabri. The third presenter is Abdul Hadi bin Mujman. Then followed by the fourth presenter, Aiman Nushamimi binti Haji Azhar. And the last presenter is Amin Marzuki bin Muhammad Azman. Now, let's proceed to the introduction of supply chain. Supply chain management is a group of suppliers required to manufacture one specific product for a company. The chain is made up of nodes or links which can include several suppliers for parts, then to the finished product, followed by the warehouse where it is stored, then to its distribution center, and finally the store when a customer can purchase it. The concept of chain is important because each link is connected in a specific direction and sequence, and the next link cannot be reached without going through the previous one. Every product a company carries may have its own supply chain, though they may utilize certain suppliers for several products. Each link will add times and costs and can involve labor, part, and transportation. Now, for the term of supply chain, the term supply chain can take on several meanings, iteration, and roles. As shown in the slide, the term of supply chain are divided into three categories, which are concept, industry, and function. For concept, the concept of supply chain, it will include the process of moving a finished good from procurement to fulfillment in a cycle. For industry, it is include the carries and regulation that oversees the transporting goods. And lastly, for function, which is related to the practice of managing the operation, logistics, and inventory level as part of coordinating the buyer and supplier. Overall, when all of this process and function had been done, it can add a value to any industry, which is why supply chain management should be an essential component of a business strategy. Okay, now let's proceed to the basic component. There are 5 basic components in supply chain management system. The first component is planning, second is sourcing, third is making, fourth is delivering, and the last is returning. For the first component, which is planning, to meet the customer demand, the supply chain manager has to plan ahead to designing the supply chain and determining how the organization will measure the supply chain to ensure it is performing as expected in terms of efficiency, delivering value for customer, and helping to achieve the organization goals. For the second component, which is sourcing, it is a critical component of the supply chain where it is a process of selecting supplier who will provide the goods, raw material, or service that creates the product. As part of strategic sourcing, supply chain manager must oversee the process for ordering, reserving, managing inventory, and authorizing invoice payment for supplier. The next point is making. Supply chain manager needs to help coordinate all the steps involved in creating the product itself. These include reviewing and accepting raw material, manufacturing the products, quality testing, and packaging. For delivery, the supply chain management must ensure that the product reach the customer is achieved through logistics and is fundamental to supply chain success. This includes coordinating the sub-order, scheduling the delivery, dispatching, invoicing, and receiving payments. In some cases, organizations outsource the delivery process to other organizations who can oversee the special handling requirement or home delivery. For the last component, it is returning. Returning is a network developed that support returning products, include scrapping or reproducing a defective product. This network need to be responsible and flexible to support the customer needs. And that is all from me. Now I will pass to the net presenter, Nasr Hakim.
Assalamualaikum. I am Hakim and now I will present about objective of supply chain management. The objective of supply chain management is first, space gap. Supply chain management or supply chain move the good physically from the point of production to the point of distribution. Thus, it is fill the space gap. Supply chain management also make sure the good produced in one particular place available to consumption to consumer at the right place. Next, it is also time gap. Uh, the supply chain management will make sure the excess of manufactured product is properly stored when it is not required to use, and will make it available if the product is required to use. So it fill the gap of time. And then uh, the quantity gap. The quantity gap happen when there is a difference between quantity produced and demanded by customer. So the good supply chain management will take care of the quantity gap. For example, they only produce the product that is only demanded by the customer. And then the fourth objective is variety gap. Supply chain management ensure they have wide variety of good to for the consumer, because the consumer or customer usually want to have a variety of product. By having the effective supply chain management system, it fulfill the consumer need to choose the variable good. Okay, the benefit of supply chain management is lower the cost. Organization or company can lower the operating cost by making what customer needed. By managing based on the demand, will keep the organization or company from overproducing, which will cut the labor, raw material costs, and also cut inventory cost management and transportation costs. And then the next benefit is it will increase the revenue. When the company use the technology to stay closer to the customer demand, it will more likely uh, product remain available for customer to purchase. For example, as Walmart keeping the shelf stock. And then the benefit of supply chain management is asset utilization. With the effective supply chain management, the company can use capital asset more effectively. And then finally, it can improve the quality control. Responsibility supply chain management directly can affect the quality of company product and services which are produced, keeping global CSR standard and guideline in the mind. After we discuss the benefit of supply chain management, now we will proceed to the obstacle or disadvantage of supply chain management. The obstacle of supply chain management is improper or inconsistent implementation, as it is require the consistent financial statement, time and human resource capital. Inconsistent, this factor will lead to labor wastage, redundancy in services, and misses the deadline. Next, it is required to train staff for them to become the professional. So the company will spend more money to train their staff to make sure they understand how the system is being implemented. And then the next obstacle is lack of coordination between the department. The lack of coordination is due to misinformation and communication between the department due to the complex system that is difficult to be understood by the staff. After being discussed about the obstacle of supply chain management, now we will proceed to supply chain management diagram. It has 6 elements that important, which is first raw material, next supplier, then manufacturer, after that distributor, then retailer, and finally consumer. For this topic, we will discuss thoroughly on the supplier. For the detail of the supplier, I will pass to the next presenter, Abdul Hadi bin Mujmal, to present that part. Thank you.
Thank you to my group members, Nasir Hakim, for a great presentation. So next, here I am, Abdul Hadi bin Uthman, to present on my part. Supplier selection process. Identify a supplier. So before selecting your supplier, it is important to gather the opinions of stakeholders and define the criteria for the selection process. This list of stakeholders may include members from research and development department, purchasing department, marketing department, quality assurance, and any other area of your organization that touches the suppliers selection process. During this time, it is important to identify a few suppliers to assess their capabilities and compare pricing. The supplier selection team should work with the potential suppliers to establish specifications, such as they should explain how the supplier's materials would be used in your products and within the manufacturing process. Keep in mind that the ultimate goal is a win-win situation for both parties, which is supplier and manufacturer. Therefore, open and transparent communication is extremely important. A key consideration in selecting the right supplier is value. Cost should not be the only driver. You should instead look at the total cost of ownership, which look at the supplier that for criteria, which is customer service, delivery commitments, reliability and responsiveness, and then lastly resources saving for hard and soft. Second step is measuring supply performance. Another important step of the supplier management process is developing an audit and assessment program. Best-in-class supplier programs conduct audit throughout multiple stages of the manufacturer or supplier relationship. We should always conduct an audit before the contract is signed to confirm that the supplier does not have any significant compliance or quality system failures that could affect your ability to produce top quality products. Another reason to conduct the audit beforehand is to understand the supplier's strengths and weaknesses before the relationship become official. Even after the contract is signed, you should continue auditing, basing the frequency of the audit on the criticality of the supplier. To determine the frequency, all suppliers should be categorized into a level of risk or importance. This, this prioritization will help you be smarter and more effective with your resources and place a higher focus on your important, higher risk supplier while continuing to monitor second-tier supplier. Okay, before an established audit program, you should continuously monitor and assess its supplier performance. You can track positive or sustained strong performance as well as negative trend. Step 3 is gaining supplier feedback. Another tool you can utilize with supplier is a self-assessment questionnaire. The supplier self-assessment can be used to identify performance gaps as well as discover how the supplier understands their own operation. In addition to audit and assessment, it also is beneficial to monitor informative metrics that direct value to the business. You should discuss and select the appropriate metrics which require you to receive their input and understanding of purposeful measurements. Example of this metric include rejected lots, perfect shipments, and documentation errors. The metric selected should measure the total cost of ownership as well as improve performance toward the maximum finished product performance. So that's all from me. Next step will be presented by my members, Aiman and Shamini. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hadi. My name is Aiman, and now I will continue with the step 4 of supplier selection process. The supplier may be able to attain certified status when your relationship with them develops stronger and both sides believe they are receiving great results. This happens when you create a list of specific criteria that your providers must meet. Certification is earned via consistent, successful performance, and it can be lost through a bad performance or a negative audit compliance outcome. The supplier will become more involved into your manufacturing process as the partnership develops. Next is step 5, which is developing partnerships. When strategic alliance is formed, the manufacturer and supplier relationship is at its finest, allowing full understanding of the source of material and ensuring good quality. A supplier with deeper business partnership is more likely to anticipate what the manufacturer requires and to take the initiative in communication. If problems arise that limit production availability or a quality issue is discovered, they will alert the manufacturer. Unfortunately, there are pitfalls in forming this type of partnership. Trust in both sides is essential, and both parties must ensure that there are no potential or real conflict of interest. There is a lot more to lose when both parties grow more reliant on each other. If there is a breakdown on either side, or the relationship will collapse. Lastly, step 6, ensuring quality. Developing a supplier quality management programs can be a complex and upfront commitment, depending on the amount of materials and ingredients required. You'll have no worries knowing you're offering top quality to your customers if you decide to create solid relationships with dependable suppliers. When your supplier quality team is focused on matters other than the quality of materials, and your happy end users have faith in the product you deliver, the benefit can be achieved. Next, there are 3 significant approaches in supplier selection. Number 1 is quality product and delivery terms. Number 2 is capability of suppliers. And the last one, combination and capability of products. The first base is on the product that the supplier can deliver. This approach will normally check the product prototype to see if the quality and the technical specifications can be met and the delivery terms are satisfactory. The second is based on the capability that the supplier displays. It typicals to check whether the supplier has this design and development capability, strategic investment in the technology and skills, and up to scratch management. This capability approach is often used for long-term supplier selection and can be done well before the idea of component is taking shape. And the third is the combination of product and capability selection. It applies when a strategically important new part is to be outsourced to a new supplier. Not only the supplier must comply with all the product-specific requirements, but also should have the capability of making future generations of the products in long run, so as to sustain the supply chain development. That's all from me. Now we move to the next presenter, Amin.
Okay, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. My name is Amin and I'll be continuing with the presentation. As you can see from the slide, we found 9 suppliers capability criteria. These are only some of the many suppliers capability criteria out there. The first being total management policy, which obviously you want to find a supplier with a good company's policy. Second being BS 5750 or British Standards 5750 and ISO 9000 certification or equivalent. This is basically a series of standards of the quality management. Third is implementing the latest techniques. You want a supplier that adapts to the new technology so that you may obtain your materials faster. Fourth is in-house design capability. For an example, the product requires raw material A and B. If the company can produce raw materials A, then they only need to find a supplier that can supply raw materials B. The fifth is the ability to supply locally or worldwide. If you are planning to grow your company bigger, whether it be locally or overseas, you want a supplier that can supply you with those quantity. Six is the consistent in delivery performance, service standards, and product quality. You want a supplier that is punctual and on time with their services. 7 is attitude on total acquisition cost. You want a supplier that has list down the quotas and total cost of your materials so that it may ease your financial work. 8 is the willingness to change, flexible attitude of management and workforce. You want a supplier that can adapt to the sudden shift in the environment in case there is an increase in demand. And lastly, favorable long-term investment plan. Sometimes it's hard to obtain a supplier that can maintain a good quality and good quality services. So by having a long-term investment plan, it may eliminate the problem. Now on to the next slide. Okay, supplier relationship management or SRM. SRM is defined as a systematic approach to assess suppliers' contribution to your business. SRM helps in a comprehensive approach to managing an enterprise interactions with the organizations. The objective of SRM is to streamline and make more effective process between an enterprise and its supplier. It focuses on developing a mutual beneficial relationship with all of the suppliers. The enterprise may even consider strategic partnership with a specific supplier. Okay, now on to the next slide. Okay, continuing with SRM. The activities of SRM are not directly related to a transaction process, but indirectly supports the transactional process. SRM benefits by optimizing the balance of process of managing supplier relationship, controlling inventory costs, shortening time to market, automating the negotiation process, and lastly, simplifying the bidding process. Technology advancement in SRM provides procure-to-pay optimization, catalog management, self-service procurement, operational sourcing, centralized contact management, and operational reporting. Companies with long-term SRM tends to outperform their peers. Leaders in supplier development and innovation tend to beat industry trends by double growth and other metrics. Now on to the next slide. Okay, on to example of supply chain companies. The example of supply chain companies that we found are Unilever, McDonald's, Samsung, and Walmart. Unilever supply chain system extends beyond the manufacturing process into the core of digital transformation using artificial intelligence to manage supply chain risk and ensure the company can meet the customer's demand. While for McDonald's supply chain system is famous for its excellent supply chain management due to a system where success is shared and value exchanged between McDonald's and their suppliers. As for Samsung's supply chain system, focuses on ongoing monitoring of risk of factors, programs to support its suppliers' competitiveness, improve work environments, active consumer communication channels, on-site quality inspections, and many more. And lastly, Walmart's supply chain system, which is famous for its logistical and operational masterpiece. Next slide. And that is all for our presentation regarding supply chain management. Thank you for listening and Assalamualaikum.